Hello, Christian Allen here from Cerelan, and I'm going to be doing a video postmortem of Takedown Red Sabre. As you know, I've been planning on doing this for quite a while. I tried to write several versions in the classic kind of GDC format, but I find it's better to go over things in a timeline. I'll let you know what we've been doing the past few months. I do apologize for the delay in this video. It's been a few months. You might notice I look a little bit different than I did the last time you saw me on video. Unfortunately, after recovering from shoulder surgery during an injury that I suffered during the development takedown, I put off getting surgery on it. I had a power tool accident and fractured my nose and crushed my right orbital socket, which required major surgery, implanting a titanium plate into my face and a sheet underneath my right eye so that my eye didn't sink back into my head. If you haven't seen the video that was recorded of me in the hospital, always wear safety glasses while using power tools. A cheap $2 pair of safety glasses from Home Depot saved my vision and potentially my life. So that being said, I'm now back off the couch and back in the office. It's literally I've been down on medication from the various surgeries that I had to have, multiple reconstructive surgeries, since the middle of July. So it's been almost 3 months, and I'm now back in physical therapy and doing all that fun stuff. So I've been kind of putting this off, and I need to get it done and get it out and let you guys know some more of the behind the scenes. So development of Takedown started after our Kickstarter campaign in it ended on April of 2012. We netted about $198,000 from the Kickstarter campaign, and we were working with an angel investor to fund the remainder of the development. So we immediately started prototyping the game. If you guys were following, we basically put up every step that we did, started working on the game, and things were going along swimmingly. And in July, however, this investor, who I can't name due to confidentiality documents, basically went dark, and it took us about a month to figure out that he decided to go to Africa and import black rhinos, or just changed his mind. I don't know. That's what happens when you're dealing with billionaires. They change their mind on a whim. So we were kind of left hanging there. So while the team and myself continued to develop on the game, I went on a pitch spree. Basically pitched everybody that I could. This was before early access was available. So in the fall of 2012, as things were starting to get tight on the funding, we'd spent a lot of money on, acquiring software and building the game and all those things. We met with 505 Games and signed a deal, and things were really moving forward. So we started full development production in January of 2013, and we set our sights on a ship date of September of 2013. And as part of the deal, we would also make the XBLA version of Takedown to ship concurrently, was the plan. So we started full development. One of the first challenges that we ran into was hiring solid engineers. We had a lot of candidates. We had a lot of candidates of people that we wanted to hire, but we knew because we had a small team and a small budget, we had to be very careful about who we acquired. And it took us a while to get a number of engineers on board, longer than we anticipated. So we had some features that were taking longer than we anticipated. Another thing we ran into at this point was middleware integration. Our audio guys, who I'd previously worked with before at Warner Brothers, wanted to develop the audio in WWise. And so we had thought because WWise was kind of approved middleware for Unreal that it would pretty much be plug and play. Unfortunately, it took us quite a few weeks to get it up and running and fully integrated. The other thing that did to us in hindsight that we didn't that didn't work out well is that it locked us into that version of Unreal, which was I believe February 2012 build. And so as newer Unreal features came online, specifically with Steam integration, we had to bake those ourselves. So when Steam came out with something new or updated something, we couldn't just automatically use the code that Epic put together because we were locked into an older version. If we had done that, we would have had to go back and rebake all of our audio content. And we had a lot of audio content, a lot of subtle stuff. So that was kind of the first two hurdles we ran into. The next challenge we ran into, and probably the biggest challenge we ran into, there's two things. One was QA. We originally had two QA teams working on the game. Terry coordinated here at the office, and we had a team down in LA and a team in India. In July, as we were moving into getting ready to ship and into full bug phase, there was a dispute with the American team, and the American team was dropped from the game. So we were purely working with an Indian team. They were ramped up, but there was a lot of challenges with working with. I gotta remember to look at the camera. I haven't done one of these in a while. There was challenges working with an Indian team. Just from a language, time difference, and also the team wasn't as experienced in testing multiplayer PC and Xbox focused titles. We eventually did bring on another team in Montreal, but that took a while, and they were mainly focused on Xbox certification. So that was a huge challenge. We had a lot of problems with the QA team that we're working on. And it definitely was amplified by the fact that you have a small team. When you have a very small team, if myself is doing all the missions and you get a bunch of bugs in the missions, you go and you fix the bugs, you mark them as fixed in the database, and then the team comes on and regresses those bugs without getting a new build and marks them all as unfixed, then you just wasted a whole day of testing and multiple hours of design time to go in and regress those. So that was a major hurdle. Definitely in the future, if I work with an external QA team, I'm going to want them to be U.S. based, or at least in the same North or South America. I've worked in the past previously with external QA teams, but it's definitely on a tiny game. It's a tiny team. It's much more impactful than it can be, when you have, a 200-person team, and so it's, you've got the bandwidth to track something down. So the other challenge that we ran into was purely scope of the game. Because we had a broad mandate for a tactical shooter, everybody wanted various different features: single player, co-op, multiplayer, squad AI, planning, and in the spring, when it was pretty clear that AI was sucking up a vast amount of our engineering resources and eating into other features, we sat down and took a hard look at the quote-unquote single-player experience and what we felt we could complete within the time and budget that we had. And one of the things you have to keep in mind here, in game development, budget equals time. So if you have a set budget and a set number of people, then that's going to show you when you have to finish. And so, where was I? So in around March timeframe, me and James sat down, took a hard look at it, and felt that it would have been appropriate to cut the squad-based experience, the single-player squad-based experience. And so we sat down with 505 and the team, and we talked about it. And in hindsight, that would have been a strong decision. Would have been to cut that from launch and possibly look at something, farther down the line, adding it back in, and then gone out to Kickstarters and explained why and talked through it. And there would have been some people that were not happy with that and mad. But I think that would have been the right decision to take in hindsight, because that way the newer audience members coming in, it's funny, the perception of games, if you say it doesn't have an experience, and it's sometimes better than having a subpar experience, or experience that's not what someone wants or is not fully fleshed out. It doesn't have a lot of the features that you want to get in. Yeah, so we're in development. And the other challenge we had coming up to launch and post-launch was that small team experience. On our communication strategy, we had this it's hardcore, super realistic, it doesn't hold your hand, and it's, a small team and a small budget. That small team and small budget part kind of got dropped by the media, and it was great that we were getting, 2-page spreads in OXM next to Assassin's Creed, but that, small game, small team message kind of got dropped, and people didn't understand or care, honestly, whether that the game didn't look and feel like Battlefield, and that hit us a lot on things like animations. We actually had a ton more animations, but there was an engineering bottleneck on getting a lot of those transition animations and things like that, like hot reloads and things like that into the game. So that kind of brings me to the next big, hindsight is 2020. When we started this game, Kickstarter was brand new. Everything was traditional. There was no Steam Greenlight. There was no early access. None of that existed. Well, by the time we shipped, it all did exist. And so I think that's one of the key lessons learned, is the mistake that we made in treating a digital release and a community-funded project and a community-backed game as a traditional retail launch product. So we went through all the same steps that we do for a AAA game with press and media, and trying to get exclusives and things like that, with the added pressure of still needing to provide assets and information to the community. So I essentially had to create double the assets and videos and content so that I could give the press, who still want their exclusive, if you give us a screenshot, we'll give you an article, and then the community that deserve, that back the game and deserve that information. So I was creating double the assets, which was a challenge. And the fact that you had your creative director, head of the company, mission scripter, press guy, screenshot creator, doing all this was hard on the team as well. It was a challenge for the team to continue to work massive crunch hours when I'm at QuakeCon or at E3 demoing the game, and then doing check-ins from my hotel room in the middle of the night and things like that. That was a challenge as well. Also, we got hit kind of on the personal front. One of our team members, their brother passed away right at the tail end of development. My grandfather passed away right at the tail end of development, and then in the spring, while we were working on the patches, my grandmother passed away, my final grandparent. Also, one of our team members was on a motorcycle and had his leg crushed, got hit by a car, and was out for quite a few weeks. So again, when you have a 10-person full-time team, and we had about 9 contractors at various points, and you lose one of them for a month, it's huge. And it's a huge impact. But back to the retail release, I kind of got off track there, is, at a certain point, if we had not been heads down, in development, and been really looking at the digital landscape and kind of the gaming trends for smaller games, we should have, switched over to that early access model. But because of, this was compounded by a couple things. One, frankly, the failure in the QA department, or the QA arena, to fully vet and test the game in a good manner. that double hit us because we were literally hit bugs. When it got to the community and got to the public, there was bugs that we just had no idea existed. And so we had to switch over from DLC mode and Xbox mode into full, bug fixing fire mode on day one. It was literally, we took one day off. We took Saturday off. But once it was apparent that people were having a lot of issues, we had to go right back into crunch mode again. And instead of focusing on features that we wanted to add, we had to focus on fixes that needed to be done. Now, if we had done an early access, I think the release would have had a totally different tone and timbre. One of the other critical mistakes we made, I think, is not recognizing Steam as its own community. I can't look at the camera. I'd always been active with the community, obviously, and spent a lot of time keeping people up to date and talking to people and listening to their concerns and complaints and wants and needs. And I had thought that people, I just didn't recognize that Steam, was its own community. Having been away from the PC world for a while, I had thought people would come to our forums or come to our Facebook or come to our Twitter or come to the Kickstarter page and all these things. But a lot of people didn't. And then when they didn't get responded to appropriately, whether it was because of lack of community management bandwidth or whatever, they weren't happy, obviously. There was also a really bad QA that was put out on Steam that didn't go over well. And I actually broached switching the game over to an early access and offering refunds to the people that weren't happy. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make that decision. In hindsight, I would have done that as well. But we felt, we still had some funds left over, and we were determined to fix the game. And so we spent the next few months focused on patches and content. We made some new levels, we made some new weapons, and then we focused on features and fixes, and we fixed a ton of stuff. We had 8 major patches, we had a big free DLC pack. Obviously we got it ready for the Xbox after some TCRs. The Xbox was kind of a sordid tale. When we started on the game, the plan was we built it first in PC, then we were going to port it to Xbox, and then we were either going to ourselves port it to PS3, or at the beginning it was PS3, or contract a outside developer to port it for us. But unfortunately, the sales weren't enough to justify a PlayStation version, or even not justify it, pay for it. People's idea of porting things don't really jive with reality and how much time and money that it costs to do something like that. But we were in that weird transition at the end of the console cycle, so nobody knew when we started. Nobody knew what was going on with the Xbox One. And one of both the good and bad of being an experienced developer is everybody treats you like a AAA developer, but you don't have those inroads in. So while we did have a representative at Microsoft that we'd worked with, we were out of the loop on Xbox One. They couldn't release any information about Xbox One because we weren't, even though I NDA'd up the yin-yang with Microsoft, that we were not approved Xbox One developers at the beginning. We are now. And so we made the call to go to Xbox 360. We felt there'd be a strong digital market. There's a lot of hardcore gamers on Xbox 360, and of course there are as well as on PlayStation with the SOCOM community. But then Microsoft was having a hard trouble figuring out what was going on too as well. You remember there was all the messaging stuff going on with Xbox One. And then we got involved in some of Arcade, and they really wanted us in some of Arcade for like a month, and then they didn't, and so everything kept changing, and we didn't know what was going on. But then now Microsoft has this whole indie program, and Sony's doing it as well. They look at Steam and they go, oh, that's let's support indies. Well, they didn't really have that back then, so we were on the same pedestal as, the same platform as everybody else, as Battlefield. And in fact, my experience was there was a lot of things that when you're a bigger developer that you can get waived, like technical requirements and things like that, because they want you to launch, because they're going to get a big cut of that. Well, if you're a smaller game at a smaller price, they don't really care as much. And so getting waivers on things like, oh, if you start the game with your Guitar Hero controller, you can also run the game through your Guitar Hero controller. Really? Is that a reason to hold it? Nah, I don't think so. Anyway, so back to Steam. One of the big challenges we faced, and in hindsight, I would do differently, is we really worked hard and spent a lot of time and effort and ran into challenges to make sure that the game could run outside of Steam. Because there's a few vocal Kickstarters that when I said on the Kickstarter page that we wanted to do it DRM free, I didn't really consider Steam DRM. I considered it a delivery service. And so, there was definitely some people when we announced on Steam that were really mad about that. And so, I was constantly asking my engineers, like, well, can we make sure it still runs outside of Steam so they can just copy it out of their folder, or they can take their disk and just copy it on their machine and just run it? Yeah. Well, the problem with that is then we ran into problems integrating Steam features, because we were trying to integrate, Steam servers and finding people via Steam and joining your friends via Steam. Ran into a lot of challenges with that. In hindsight, again, what I would have done or should have done is say, okay, screw it, we're going full Steam. We'll worry about a DRM-free version later. These 10 people that are really mad about it, here's your $15 back. Or you can just wait for the GOG version or whatever like that. Again, that's one of the challenges of being a crowdfunded game, is that you have this responsibility to these folks, and sometimes business or real life challenges run up against those things, and at a certain point, you either if you try to walk the line, it's tough to walk the line, especially when you're not fully funded from the crowdsourcing, but still want to deliver a quality product to everybody. So then the other challenge we ran into post-launch, was we're getting out patches and we're putting out content and we're trying to keep everybody informed, and we're fixing things, daily, getting out hot fixes. But we couldn't get the press to take a second look at the game. In February, after we'd patched, all sorts of major issues and really improved on things while maintaining, sticking to the core vision of the game and not, going, oh, okay, we'll add respawns or, objective, or highlighting bad guys and things like that some people wanted. We couldn't get them back to look at it. There was even a specific YouTube personality that had put up a negative thing, and he mentioned these 3 major bugs. And the Tuesday after launch, we fixed those 3 major things, and he wouldn't go back and look at the game or acknowledge the fixes or anything like that. So that was pretty challenging. And so yeah, and then we're currently working on the fixes. And then in the spring, funding was running low. We were running out of time to be able to add more content and money to fund that. And we started talking to another major publisher, a platform holder, about making a game for one of their platforms. So that would allow us to transition into the kind of the next generation while still maintaining support for Takedown. That was the plan, is that we would work on this new game, but also basically be able to continue to pump content and patches and things into Takedown. So from about January to April, we were in pretty serious talks with these folks and creating content for them. And then they backed out and changed their mind. And we never really got a firm answer. There was some shifts at the company between external and internal developers. They acquired some developers. So we never really got a clear answer why. And So then I spent the rest of the spring. So in April, essentially I had to put the company on hold with the hopes of getting this new game picked up, and I talked to everybody, and we didn't feel like running another Kickstarter would have either been successful or that we really had the stamina to do it, and so that's basically where we're at. So we have a prototype for a new game that we built in Unreal 3, but our next steps are really deciding what we want to do in the future. Obviously, technology is changing, or has changed. Delivery platforms have changed. With the rise of early access, it's a completely different landscape for smaller teams and smaller games than it was in spring of 2012. Massive changes, and so that's really interesting. The other thing I do want to touch on is, for me personally, I've been the head and the spokesman of multiple games in the past, and but I didn't anticipate the roller coaster ride that is the internet today, and how different it is when you have 100 people at your back versus then when it's basically just you and a few other folks, especially with the interlinking of you as a person into the project and the game. I think the landscape has changed that way as well in the past few years. Things are definitely much more personal, both on the good side and the bad side, and didn't quite anticipate the some of the vitriol that would get thrown at me, and death threats and all sorts of really vile, hated stuff, even from some of the press. A French website said that we should all go kill ourselves, and so that got harder over time when you're putting out patches, you're putting out content, and people are just calling you names all the time. And it definitely was a challenge to stay motivated and stay positive, and eventually. In about the May timeframe, I had to check out for a few months. I couldn't deal with it. I needed to get my head screwed back on straight, because it's really a challenge, to go out there and as a game developer, one of the things you're doing is you're a salesman. If you can get out in front of it, you're selling it to your team. You got to get them excited about it. You're selling it to the community. You're selling it. You sell ideas, right? And that's part of your job as a developer. And so it's hard to stay motivated and positive, when you're faced with that kind of stuff. And I think you're seeing some of the same kind of stuff right now with whatever's going on with Gamergate. But I do want to end on not just talking about the things that went wrong on Takedown. I think that Takedown was part of a movement, and maybe a little bit earlier part of the movement of gamers that really want to be able to have a voice and a say in the type of games they want, and they want to be able to believe in transparency and honesty and no bullshit development. And I think we stuck true to that. We're as transparent as we possibly can be, possibly to a fault. Sometimes when you're honest about things, that can be, raise its own hurdles. And I think we educated some folks about how games are made. And the other thing I want to say is that I'm really proud of the team that came together. You had these folks. Some of them had been in the industry for over a decade, and they took huge pay cuts, huge benefit cuts. They put their jobs on the line, and their careers on the line to come work on this team, on this project. And part of that was there's a lot of folks that are tired of traditional corporate development and the way that decisions are made by the big publishers, constantly chasing the next big thing, and wanted to focus on something that just focused on the community and the gamer. And so they were really motivated to see that, and they also wanted to work on a small team and really contribute. And each one of those team members really contributed 150% over what you'd see when you're working on a $100 million game or a $50 million game or even a $25 million game. And trying to educate those people, and that's why sometimes in the past I've gotten pretty angry. It's one thing to get on me about something, that's fine, but when people get on my teammates, I get pretty protective. It's a military thing, and so I've probably said some things that I shouldn't. But the team really, they busted their ass and they did a really good job considering the time and budget constraints that we were under. We shipped a game. That's no small feat. We went from nothing to a title in less than 2 years. And so really proud of them, really proud of the growth that they made. And then lastly, I'm really proud of our community interaction. Up until the point of April, we took our licks and we just kept going and steamed ahead. And some people are disappointed in the project, and some people aren't disappointed in it. Some people were really happy with it, especially Russians. I don't think they bought it. They probably pirated it. But get a lot of nice people from Russia saying really nice things. If only they'd buy it, it'd be good. So that's where we're at. We're going to be looking into the future and seeing what we want to do moving forward. And part of that is going to be based on your guys' response to this video. I'm going to put it out there and see what you guys think. And let us know. Definitely come to our forums. I'm going to be getting back into the forums over the next few weeks. Now that I can actually type. I couldn't type for about 2 months. I had to do everything on my phone with one hand, stoned on OxyContin. So I still have nerve damage in my face, so this is me smiling. This is as big as I can smile, but hopefully that'll get better in the next couple months. So definitely come to our forums. I don't read YouTube video comments anymore, so I probably won't be responding to any of those, but feel free to come over to the forums, Serellan.com, SERELLAN.com. /forums, or click on the forums link and let us know what you think. Okay, peace.